I'm Paul Kennedy, President of the Walker Area Community Foundation, and it's my pleasure to welcome you to our annual meeting today. It's my honor also to recognize U.S. Congressman Robert Aderholt and his family here, Alabama Senate Majority Leader Greg Reed, Greg escaped me, Alabama Representatives Connie Rowe and Tim Wadsworth. Thank you for taking the time to be with us today. We would like to, just a few items to mention before we begin. We would appreciate it if you would silence your cell phone. And listed on the back of the program that's in front of you on the table are the wonderful businesses and individuals who've sponsored tables. We'd also like to give a special thanks to Leaf and Petal for our lovely stage decorations. Also on the back of your program, we've listed the ways that you can give to the Community Foundation. There are envelopes on the table for your convenience as well. And finally, there are cookies on your table. Those cookies are tied with ribbons. If you have the green ribbon on your cookie, you get to take the centerpiece home with you. Now, if you would, please rise and remain standing for the invocation to be delivered by Walker County's own Reverend Scott McCullough, pastor of the First Baptist Church at Carbon Hill. Scott?
Will you bow with me? Father, we come to you today with a grieving heart over the deaths of a television reporter and cameraman. We come to you grieving over several things in our nation. So, Lord, to be able to come today to a meeting like this with the Walker Area Community Foundation, to see all the good that's being done is such a bright light in dark times. So, Father, we thank you for all those that work with this foundation. We thank you for all those that give to this foundation. And Lord, we thank you for all those that receive blessings and funds from this foundation. God, continue to bless the Walker Area Community Foundation and all that they do. Lord, because in giving, they remind us of the gospel. And Lord, you gave to us your Son, freely, willingly gave so that we might have life. And we thank you for this foundation that gives so others can have hope and minister and serve. Lord, we thank you for this food that's been prepared. And we ask you to bless it and nourish our bodies with it. And Lord, we pray for Walker County, the state of Alabama, and this great nation. And we ask all this in the precious name of Jesus. Amen. Amen.
Thank you, Scott. Please be seated. Today we celebrate the Foundation's 20th year. Think back with me for just a minute. How old were you 20 years ago? That should be easy. What car were you driving? How old were your children? Your nieces, your nephews? What was your favorite song, your favorite movie? Well, here's a little trivia for you. In 1995, Die Hard with a Vengeance, Toy Story, and Apollo 13 were the top three blockbusters. The Oklahoma City bombing happened. The O.J. Simpson trial, well, they were the top national stories. The top Alabama story occurred when Heather Whitestone became the first Miss America. With a disability. Cost of a gallon of gas, $1.09. Postage stamp, 32 cents. The average cost of a new car, $15,500. And when this foundation began, the Dow Jones Industrial Average was at 4,191. As you can tell, the world, our state, and our country have changed since then. We were just discovering the internet. Carried your cell phone in a bag if you had one. The concept of the iPad was 15 years in the future. Today, through technology, we're faster, more efficient, and we approach each day with a desire to make things happen. This foundation, our foundation, is no different. We are faster, we are more effective in our work, and we meet each day with a desire to make things happen. Over the last 20 years, we've grown in our capabilities while remembering the core values that define the foundation. It's only fitting in this year, the year of our 20th anniversary, we would have the privilege to announce the creation of the Larry Drummond Family Fund. Larry was an original board member of the foundation and was instrumental in laying the groundwork for our successes today. He loved his family, his church, and his community, and he served them well and accomplished much in his life. For all of his accomplishments, the one that meant a great deal to him was being able to help others. His family follows this lead in the creation of his donor-advised fund. We're looking forward to working with Abby, Terry, Scott, and Patrick as they meet the general needs of nonprofit organizations, benefiting an untold number of individuals across our state and nation through Larry's fund. I now welcome our foundation chairman, Eddie Jackson, to the podium to share with you more details of our work.
Thank you, Paul. As you'll see on the annual report on your table, the Walker Area Community Foundation has indeed done well this last year. From strengthening our nonprofits to investing our dollars where it counts, this foundation continues to make a difference in our community. One of the reasons we are here today in this very building is because the original founders saw fit to do this. We have an original founder here today, and we're going to go off script in just a minute to give him an opportunity to make some comments. And I would like you all to welcome Pat Willingham to the podium for a few minutes.
Thank you, Eddie. 20 years ago, we formed the Walker Area Community Foundation. 3 men in the community who were well known and had high standing agreed to lend their names to the board of the foundation. One of those men has just been talked about, Larry Drummond. Larry's contributions continue on today through his family. Another was J. George Mickey, who served on this board until his death. And George made many contributions. But the man who deserves the most credit for the success of the Walker Area Community Foundation is sitting with us today. His name is John Oliver. I think all of you know John. John's vision and leadership as chairman of the board and his constant encouragement, pushing, searching for contributions from others in the community has gone on for 20 years to the point where we're now at almost $25 million in this foundation. That is remarkable. And John, I want you to know that all of us in Walker County, thank you so much.
He still comes to the board meetings. He still has a lot of influence down there. Today we look to the future with an announcement of a new board member. Our board thought long and hard about who to bring on, and you know, I'm too old, and I told the group that I was with the other night that I moved from the Donors Club to the Death Transfer Club. My next gift will be in my will, probably. So we got to look at some youth, and we have settled on Scott Thornley, who will be with us starting in January. And Scott is attending our board meetings now. I don't know how many of you know Scott, but he's going to replace Haig Wright, who will be sorely missed. Is there a picture of Haig up there? Yeah, okay. That's from the billboard. Haig, I sit next to Haig, and we're going to miss you, Haig. We're going to miss your insight. We're going to miss your work. We're going to miss your thoughtfulness. And anybody that knows Haig knows we're going to miss his laugh and his humor. But he turned out, so he's got to go unless we circle back in a few years and get him back. But we have a debt of gratitude to Haig, and I want to recognize him for that right now. I know that Haig will continue to be with us, and that whenever we call on him, he'll work for us. As I said, we thought long and hard about this. Scott's passion for the foundation has grown into a directorship. Scott has been working with the foundation for 10 years on the grant review committee, which is kind of a thankless job in the sense that he doesn't get to help give out the money. He gets to figure out who gets it, and then nobody knows he's had a hand in it. But Scott's worked hard and labored long in the vineyard for this, and he's a very worthy person. He went to the University of Alabama Law School undergraduate. He's a local boy. He graduated from high school here. He has 2 generations of teachers in his family, his mother and his grandmother. His grandfather was the mayor. And he brings home that perspective for our community. He went to the University of Alabama Law School, and he's now practicing law with Eddie Sanders and his daddy, Brent Thornley, at the old Maddox McLaurin firm, which is now Maddox, Thornley, and Sanders. He's currently president of the ARC of Walker County Board of Directors and serves on the Economic Restructuring Committee for Jasper's Main Street program, and he's district vice president of the University of Alabama Alumni Association, for which Beth Stooks forgives him. Scott's married to Bess Johnson, and they have 2 gorgeous children, Margaret 4 and Elizabeth 18 months. Scott, we welcome you aboard. We know we'll accomplish great things with you on the board. Thank you very much. There's an inspirational speaker that's written many books. Some of you may be familiar with him, named Andy Andrews. He wrote a book called The Butterfly Effect, and I want to share with you a quote from that book. There are generations yet unborn whose very lives will be shifted and shaped by the moves you make and the actions you take today. I think you'll see as we enter into the next portion of our program the power we all have as individuals to make a difference in the lives around us. And I want to do a quick little video, it takes 2 or 3 minutes, which I think very strongly illustrates this concept. our keynote speaker.
I'm very excited to introduce Liz Huntley to you today. As a compassionate community sharing our time, talent, treasure, and trust, we need to hear her awe-inspiring story. Liz and I were classmates in Leadership Alabama a few years back. For me, the most impactful part of the entire experience was listening to Liz as she shared her story following our participation in a poverty simulation activity. Those 10 to 20 minutes of discussion were some of the most poignant of my adult life. I was provoked to pause and acknowledge the realities and struggles of poverty on people who are doing their best, playing a hand they had no part in the dealing. In Liz's recently published book, More Than a Bird, she shares how a high-quality pre-K program, extended family, teachers, a caring pastor, ball coaches, and others encouraged her to reach for her dreams. She recognized her value to God when hearing Matthew 6:26. Look at the birds of the air. They do not sow or reap or stow away in barns, and yet your heavenly Father feeds them. Are you not much more valuable than they? I say, Liz is absolutely more than just any old bird. Liz is a strong, majestic, beautiful eagle soaring to great heights. My friend, Elizabeth Huntley.
I'll get you your check, Beth, on our way out. I tell you, it's nice to be called an eagle. But, you know, for you Bammers out there, I did go to Alabama's law school. I might serve on the board down in Auburn, but I also am chair of the alumni board at the law school. I was laughing with Allison on the way up here. I said, you know, it's really interesting. I'll be in Atlanta as board member for Auburn's kickoff game against Louisville next weekend. And then 2 weeks later, as chair of the alumni person at the law school, I have the responsibility of hosting the Alabama tailgate 10 at the Mississippi State game. Go figure. Some folks would call that the best of both worlds, I guess. First of all, let me just say to this audience, this is absolutely amazing to me. I am so overwhelmed by the sheer numbers in this room because they represent people that care. You know, oftentimes I focus a lot on just getting one person to care or one group to care, and to look out in this audience and see hundreds of people that care about people, because you wouldn't be in here if you didn't. And it's truly overwhelming to me, you know, to see this much love in one room. Let me say that I am absolutely floored at the people that you could have gotten to come and speak to you today. So I hope that I'm able to share something with you that not inspire you all, because you all are clearly inspired in what you're doing through supporting the foundation and the foundation members and everything that they're doing, but to maybe gently remind you of how important even the smallest acts of kindness are, and how they can impact and change a life. And my life story is certainly that. I understand that the board members of the foundations at least have read my story, and I've run into a few familiar faces where I go all over the Southeast and speaking, and I've seen some of you at some of the conferences I've spoken at throughout the state. So I hope I don't bore you as I rehash some of the things that I think are just so critical and important for people to hear. And let me preface everything that I have to say by saying I give absolutely all glory, hands down, no doubt about where all this comes from, to God. And I make no apology about it. He's the author and the finisher. He wrote this story. My name is just the physical name that's on it. And as I share some of it with you, you will know that only someone as ominous and powerful as God could have written a story like mine. You see, my parents were drug dealers. My mom and dad were drug dealers. We lived in the housing projects in Butler's Terrace housing projects in Huntsville, Alabama. Butler's Terrace projects is one of the worst, most violent housing projects in Alabama, not just in the city. It's definitely in the city of Huntsville, but I would dare say one of the most violent in this entire state. This was early 70s. I was living there with my mother and father, who were not married. I had 4 other siblings. There were 5 of us. We had 4 different fathers. My mother had had us from when she was age 16 until age 21. She had had the 5 of us from 4 different fathers. When I was 5 years old, my life completely changed. You see, I was down at my grandmother's house, and all of a sudden, I learned something very terrible. My mother had committed suicide. You see, my dad had been arrested not long before my mother committed suicide, and she was trying to hold down the drug trade by herself, and she broke the cardinal rule of drug dealing, I guess folks would call it, and that is she started to use her own product, heroin, which I've since learned since I've been here is a terrible issue in this community as well. It's a terrible drug. But she became addicted to heroin, and for reasons unknown to me, I don't know. I know a suicide letter was left. She divided the 5 of us up amongst 3 different relatives across the state, and she went back to the housing projects in Butler's Terrace, took out a gun, and committed suicide. So here I am, 5 years old, down in Clanton, Alabama, in the housing projects with my grandmother. Very poverty-stricken situation there. My grandmother, I don't know how much education she had, but she was a domestic worker. She cleaned houses for a living. She had other adult children living in the home. Me and my younger sister taken from our other siblings, mother dead, daddy's getting out of jail. Just the most terrible of a situation for any child to be in, particularly a 5-year-old child. Well, to add insult to injury, there was also an uncle in that house that sexually abused me. So, dealing with poverty, dealing with grief, I'm dealing with the incarceration of a dad. I have a grandmother who's not very affectionate. I mean, she is a hard woman because she has to be. I mean, she's raised 8 children by herself because she left her own abusive situation. So, you know, you can imagine at 5 years old, and some of you may have 5-year-old children or 6-year-old children, or you have 5-year-old or 6-year-old grandchildren. Now you try to imagine for a second those little small children going through just one of those things, let alone all of those things. So needless to say, I really felt like, why do I even exist? And you can feel that hopeless even at such a small age, because when all that's happening to you is terrible and bad, you have no reason to have any hope, because the very adults that you're trusting to take care of you are the ones that are abusing. So, my grandmother had 4 things she believed in. 1, you go to church. 2, you mind your elders. I learned real quick what happens when you don't mind your elders, so I feel bad about that one. And 3, you stay clean. I promise you, we lived in housing projects, but you could have eaten off the floor. And then 4, you get an education. Well, my grandmother did what most people do, not just in Alabama, but in this country. And that is, we sort of trust that we live in a place where our kids are going to get a decent education. And so we send them off to school in hopes that it'll all work out and they'll get a good education. Well, it just so happens in Chilton County at this time, down in Clanton, Alabama, we were in the middle of integration. Integration had occurred 3 years prior to that, so you know we're still having those very heated moments the first day of school. those types of things. So there were some ladies through the Community Action Program of Alabama that started a preschool for the kids in the West End community where I live. So my grandmother, with her parable number 4, Get an Education, sent me down to this preschool. And I remember going to that preschool like it was yesterday. I walked into the room and there were all these bright colors. It was nice and clean. They had little bitty desks, were just the right size for a little kid like me. And in my situation, I didn't have things like that in my home with my grandmother. So it was just nice to be in this room that was conducive just for children. So I walked in and I smiled. But when those preschool teachers came up and they embraced me and hugged me and said, "Come on in here, Elizabeth, welcome," I almost cried. Because for the first time in my little life that I could remember, I felt love and I felt an embrace of kindness. And it meant so much to me because I was starving for it. It meant so much that all I wanted to do was get those kind of hugs and responses from those teachers all the time. So what did I do? I overachieved. Anything they gave me, I did it to the best of my ability. In fact, I did it so much I ended up being valedictorian in my kindergarten class. But I did not do it because I was trying to be valedictorian or I understood the value of an education and the foundation that was being laid for me. I did it because I wanted that feedback from those teachers. I wanted that hug. I wanted that smile. I wanted that great job. I starved for it. So I did very well and had such a solid foundation in this high quality pre-K program. So let's fast forward to first grade. So it's time to start first grade. I had this great experience, had a great foundation. Everything's still the same at home. Nothing's changed as far as the terrible things I'm dealing with. But the preschool had become a buffer to a lot of that terrible stuff. So, and because it was a buffer in a nice environment, I could open up and really learn and get a good foundation. So I wake up that morning for the first day of first grade, nervous, about to go across town. No offense to the white people in the room, I just really didn't know you. I mean, other than when I'd go help my grandmother clean houses, I had no interaction with white people. So it was a little scary. It was an unknown. And so I get up that morning and I'm all ready to go. And my grandmother looks at me and she says, "Elizabeth, I want you to go across to that school and I want you to tell that teacher to put an X on the paperwork where I need to sign and send it back, and I'll send it back to the school tomorrow." So it dawned on me, my grandmother's going to send me over to that school by myself. So here I was, 6 years old, hadn't been around white people or that environment at all, and I'm being shipped across town during integration when the whole community had been talking about how high the tensions were, by myself. So y'all remember parable number 2. I didn't talk back to my grandmother, so I hopped on that bus to head over across town to that school. So I'm on the bus and I'm just remembering what she told me to do, and we get to the school and I get out off the bus and I walk into the door, and what do I see on the wall? First grade. Well, how did I know it said first grade? Because of preschool. I knew I was going to first grade, so I thought, well, I must be in the right place. I'm going to first grade. So then I saw people come in with their little children. They scrolled up and down the list. "Oh, little Susie, you're in such and such's room." So they would go off to their room. And I thought to myself, well, my name must be on that list. I'm going to first grade. Well, I knew how to read, write, and spell my name. Why? Because of preschool. So I went up to the list and I got on my tippy toes and I scrolled down that list until I found my name. And I saw what room I was supposed to go into, and I knew how to navigate in and around rooms because of preschool. So I walked into the room, and I sat in the front center desk because the ladies at preschool told me don't nothing good happen in the back of the room. So you make sure when you go over there, you sit your little tail in the front of that room. So I went and I sat in the very front center desk. I sat up straight as a board. I did not say a word. I was so nervous. It seemed like an eternity had passed. All the other kids were in there with their parents. They were getting acclimated, because for all of us, white, black, whatever, it was your first day of school. They didn't have kindergarten back then. And so eventually, the teacher started to walk up to me. And she walked up to me with this big, beautiful smile. Now, how many of y'all remember Wonder Woman? Linda Carter? Okay, she was my favorite. Wonder Woman was the bomb. And you know, and for a child like me, Wonder Woman, you know, a female superhero beating up the bad guys, she was just amazing. Especially a little girl that had lost her mom. So the teacher starts to walk towards me, and I promise you guys, she looked just like Wonder Woman. She looked like Linda Carter. So I'm sitting there in my little 6-year-old mind thinking to myself, could this be? Is Wonder Woman my teacher? How cool would that have been, you know? But of course, it wasn't Linda Carter, unfortunately. And she came up to me, Miss Pam Jones, and said, well, hello, young lady, what is your name? Big, beautiful smile. And I didn't know what to do. I panicked. The moment had finally arrived, meeting the white teacher. And all that could come out of my mouth was, my name's Elizabeth Humphrey, and my grandmother told me to tell you to put an X everywhere she needs to sign and send the paperwork home, and I'll bring it back tomorrow. Because I had rehearsed it over and over and over again on the bus. And so she looked at me and she said, well, how did you get in here? It didn't take her long to realize I was by myself. So I explained to her how I found my name on the wall and found the room and came in and sat down. Now, I know we've got lots of people in here that care about children, that work with organizations, and know that a lot of things could have happened in that moment. That she could have easily called DHR and been justified. My grandmother really should not have sent me to school first day at 6 years old. She could have written me off and said I was one of those children. But instead, she looked me in the face, dead in the eyes, with tears in her eyes, and said to me, Elizabeth Humphrey, you're going to be the brightest student I ever have. Now, that's not just the power of God. That's the power of somebody seizing an opportunity for God to use them to impact a life. Because you see, impact doesn't have to necessarily be dollars. Impact can be a kind word. Impact can be a kind embrace. Impact can even be a smile when somebody needs it. So remember the small things, because that small moment in time has a whole lot to do with why I'm standing here in front of you today at this stage in my life. Because that set the tone. That solid foundation from preschool, then going into a classroom in public school where there was a teacher that saw my potential. And of course, in my little 6-year-old mind, I thought, oh, I guess this is like preschool then. So she was all warm and lovey and fuzzy like the other ladies, so I would just do that too. And so that's what I did. I just overachieved in everything in first grade. And always was the top student, always got to be the one sitting up by the teacher in the class. And it had absolutely nothing to do with wanting to be the brightest kid in the class, but everything to do with wanting that affirmation from that teacher. And it's powerful. And where's Miss Pam Jones today? Well, when I was giving birth to my second child, she was at my house keeping my first child. And when I brought home that little caboose surprise child in December that I added to my 2 teenage kids, she was right behind me in the driveway, ready to be the first one to feed him. Yes, I do have a 8.5-month-old at home to add to my teenage kids. But God does have a sense of humor too. So that was just absolutely amazing. And that's what school became, and that's what the book talks about. It talks about how not just teachers, but people in the Civitan Club, people in the YMCAs, all these leaders that saw my potential, did all of these great acts of kindness that were small probably to them at the time, but were huge to me because God put them directly in my path at the right time as I needed something, and that's exactly what foundation programs like this does. It helps support those types of things like high quality pre-K and intervention programs and and recreational programs, things that intervene and provide buffers for children, because we can't always fix the home situation. Sometimes, unfortunately, it is what it is, you know, but we can provide some sort of hope for those children that at some point in their life, they will become adults and they get to make a choice about what type of life they want to live. And we can do those things that can help guide them in a way that they make those right choices. Now, I said at the beginning that I gave God all the glory, because even though things were going great for me academically in school, you know, eventually May would come and school would end. And when school would end, I would go back to my neighborhood for the summer and do basically nothing and suffer through the abuses and things that were going on in my life. So I was still an emotional wreck. Then one day when I was 8 years old, my Aunt Liz invited me to church on a Wednesday night, to this new little church that had opened up in the community. Now, I'll be honest with you, I never really understood church. I went with my grandmother every Sunday, but the people would get emotional in the room. I didn't understand what the preacher was saying, so it was just going because my grandmother told me to be there, and I never really got anything out of it. But an opportunity to get out of my house at night, I jumped at it, and I went to church with her. And I remember going into the church and sitting down. The first thing the pastor said, he said, "Okay, let's get out our Bibles." Well, I didn't own a Bible. The only time I'd even read the Bible was when my grandmother made us recite the 23rd Psalm at night. Other than that, I never touched a Bible. But I could read very well because of preschool and that foundation I had at elementary school. So he said, if you don't have a Bible, the deacons will get you one. So they got me a Bible, and I sat there and opened up the Bible, and I remember the sermon like it was yesterday. He was talking about Joseph and his brothers, and how Joseph was his dad's favorite. And y'all remember the story, and his brothers were very jealous, and they ended up selling him into slavery, and he goes through all of these different highs and lows in his life, to where at the end of the story, he's elevated to a position by God to where not only does he save his own family from famine, but he saves an entire country, nation from famine. And so I sat there as I listened to this story about Joseph, and I thought to myself, well, if God can do what he did for Joseph, and Joseph went through so many terrible things, maybe he can help me. So I left out of church that night. All I could think about was that service and that sermon and what I had heard and what I'd read in the Bible. So I went back the next Wednesday night. This time, we opened up the Bible to Matthew 6:26, where, to paraphrase, it said, if God will take care of the fowls of the air, and they neither reap nor sow, are we not better than they? Are we not better than a bird? And the theme of the sermon was, you are more than a bird. If God will take care of the birds, he will certainly take care of you. And all of us can sit here and think of times where we didn't ask for it, but God intervened and he took care of us in some kind of way, in a situation that made a difference and has a lot to do with why we're all sitting in this room today. Because we are more than a bird. We're his children. So that night, I went up and I professed Christ. And it was at that point that I became whole. So God took the natural and took care of me through education, community service programs, all of those things that I needed on earth. And he took the spiritual and took care of my soul and my heart. And most importantly, my mind. Because as you deal with people in your community that are going through tough home situations, particularly children, the greatest adversity they face is not in the lack of natural things, is not in the poverty, it's not in the lack of education, but it's in the mind. It's the battles that come with struggling with those things when you don't have a hope. And so God gave me a hope. And I trusted it. I trusted that I had to be more than a bird. And I trusted that no matter what was going on with me, like Joseph, like so many other examples in the Bible, that God would take care of me. And at some point, I would become an adult, and I would leave home, and I would be able to make my own choices about how I chose to live my life every day, and where I chose to sleep, and how I chose to love people and engage with people and engage with my family. I would be in control. And I share this personal story with you because I want you to not just witness by seeing me the power of God, but witness the power of community and the power of why it is so necessary that we do what we do to help our children, and that we give, and that we provide the type of programs that provides the buffers for children, especially small children. You know, a lot of you are business-minded in this room and may have read the literature that's out there now, but, you know, most of the development for a child starts before the age of 5. That's when it happens. You know, I have a 8.5-month-old at home that just sucks things up like a sponge. That's when they learn the most. But what's happening for a lot of children, and not just in Alabama, but in this country, that's when they're learning the least. And so they're starting the school not school ready. They can't find their name on a wall. They don't know how to sit quietly in a desk. They don't have the social adjustment skills. So what happens in that type of an environment? Well, they can get labeled. We can assume that they can't learn and do that way and put them in a category, and then they're tracked that way all through school. So you have a school readiness gap that's this wide, but later in 3rd grade we call it an achievement gap when the scores come out. But it's really a school readiness gap. And why is that important to business leaders? Because guess what? At some point, at some time, you're going to have to deal with it. And you're going to take the consequences of it. Whether it be the investment piece, which is for every $1 or $2 we spend on a kid getting pre-K and being school ready and closing that achievement gap, it saves us anywhere from $7 to $17 down the road in remedial programs, or those same kids going back into your community and stealing, or you having to deal with them in the court system, or you have a situation where you can't bring in business because you don't have an educated population. It is such a powerful tool to me, and I'm living proof of it, that God can use to help people out of poverty. It gives a hand up, not a hand out, because it helps develop the mind. And if the mind can learn, and it can think, and it can function, then it has the ability to do like I did at some point, start to make some choices about a better life. But if you don't get that early, and all these other things are coming in, then you're going to get some of the results that we get now, where kids don't have access to high-quality pre-K and early intervention. So I wanted to talk to you all today as community leaders, business leaders, educators, and folks that work with children. One of the biggest investments, and I know education is a huge priority for this foundation, that can be made is investing in early childhood education. Is coming up with creative ideas like Morgan County and Alabaster City School System that have leveraged their support from their community foundations and community leaders through their chambers of commerce or whatever, and understanding that pre-K is important. And the numbers show it. The numbers show it, how the kids are performing now. I show it. I am a perfect example of it, because I told you my story. And you know there is no way I would have had that same 1st grade experience if my preschool had not existed. And I had not had that early intervention, to have the wherewithal, the resiliency, the social interaction skills to be able to function like I was. It is so important. And I'm challenging you today to take a close look at access to high quality pre-K in your communities. Now, I did a little homework, and I know that here in Walker County, less than 2% of your 4-year-olds have access to high-quality pre-K, and the state average is 19%. And I have Allison Mullendorf here with me today. I brought her specifically from ASRA to be able to talk with whoever wants to talk with afterwards. And I brought my books with me for anybody that wants to get a book or want to get an autographed book. I think that sounds a little narcissistic for me to tell you that, but Beth said, bring your books. So I brought the books too. But more importantly, I have to tell y'all, and I'm sorry to pause, because I get great pause when I look out into an audience like this, and I know that there's so many people out there that care about people that need a hand up, or you wouldn't be in this room. People gave me a hand up, and I'm here. So please, as you're thinking about what it is that you need to do and where you need to go, factor in helping the little ones. They need you. They could be an Auburn Board of Trustee or go to Alabama Law School. You never know what potential might be there. And so again, I want to say thank you so much for having me here today. And God bless you for giving so much to this community. Thank you.
I'll plug your book. It's on the table back there. Should be required reading for every kindergarten teacher. When I read it, I picked it up to read it the other night. Somebody, Beth Stoops, gave me a copy, and I was going to come through the preface just to say I'd read it so I could tell her I read it, a little bit of it. And 2 hours later, I put it down with tears in my eyes. Her story didn't get any better for a long time. Words are so powerful, they move people to action on words alone. The simple, understated delivery that you just heard, and is echoed in her book, makes her story all the more powerful. There's no pretense, there's no hyperbole. It is a bad, hard story made better by people like us. And if we can't accept that challenge, we're in the wrong room, simply put. Thank you, Elizabeth. It was, to say inspirational is an understatement. Now, we're almost through. Harry Truman once said, men make history and not the other way around. In periods where there's no leadership, society stands still. Progress occurs when courageous, skillful leaders seize the opportunity to change things for the better. Your foundation is seizing that opportunity and has been for 20 years. I want you to watch one more video as to how and why we're seizing that opportunity.
Permanence and stability for the future. That's what the Community Foundation is really about, building community. And it began here in John Oliver's office 20 years ago.
If you do a little research, you will find it takes a population of at least 100,000 people to build a successful community foundation. Well, 20 years and $25 million later, I would say the research is wrong when it comes to our community.
The money is really just a vehicle. What has true power are the conversations, the learning, the risk-taking, the experiences, and the love that people bring to wanting to do good for our community.
It would not work with just a staff, just a board, or just individual donors. It works because all these people come together to make a difference. It takes us all.
It's the very definition of synergy, the creation of a whole that is greater than the sum of its parts. We can do so much more together than any of us can do alone.
The Community Foundation is a collection of people's hopes, their dreams, and their aspirations to build a better society. It's all about community betterment, raising money to support a state of mind.
Giving is like breathing. It's simply a part of our daily existence. The spirit of giving is something we are brought up knowing, the expectation that we should give back to our community.
Philanthropy is more than just money, it's us. All of us giving at the level we can to the things we care about. A little bit of money from us, together, makes bigger things happen.
You can give your money to all kinds of places, and they'll write you a nice letter and thank you and maybe even put your picture in the paper. But my thinking is that you should give it in the town where you live, where you can see the needs, and then you can walk down the street and look around and say, I helped make this happen.
Today we have the opportunity to influence lives, to influence the quality of life for our community and our state. And there's a place right here, homegrown, that allows us to do that.
If you have a real community need, we have a real community answer. We're shaping the future of Walker County. That's the real story of this foundation. By investing in this generation, we're serving the next.
We invest today in tomorrow's promise. I want us to be better together for all time, for all people.
In closing, as we celebrate our 20th anniversary year, I want to recognize some of the people in this room. I want you to stand when I call your name. Stay standing. Hold your applause. If you're a member of a board of directors or staff, please stand. And I'm going to go rapidly through this, so get on your feet. If you're a member of the President's Cabinet or ever have been a member of the President's Cabinet, please stand. If you're on the Grant Review Committee, stand. If you're an elected official, please stand. If you represent a foundation, the United Way, or partner with us in Walker County issues, please stand. If your organization has ever received a grant from the Community Foundation, please stand. If you've ever given a donation to the foundation, please stand. If you've ever served as a volunteer on a committee or a task force with us, please stand. If you've ever attended an annual luncheon, please stand. And if today is your first annual luncheon, please stand. Now, this little exercise has a point, and it tracks back to what Beth said. I wanted to identify the foundation. It's you. And as Beth said, it takes us all. I want for you to now go forth and do like John Oliver said. Be one of those people that walks down the street and says, I helped do that. It'll make you feel good, and it's good for your community. So, for the benefit of your foundation and your community, and for all people, for all time, thank you on behalf of the staff and the board of directors for attending today.